Welcome to the next edition of Grid Forward Chats. I'm Bryce Yonker. Today we have with us part 2 of the discussion with Rich Sedano and Danielle Sass Byrnett. We went so long that we just felt like we needed to keep the conversation going, so we're going to jump right into the middle. Maybe I'll ask a class of questions to see where you guys can take this, because I think it addresses both resilience and affordability in some pretty important areas. How does the regulatory structure incentivize scaling flexibility solutions? So the next generation of efficiency, the demand side management programs, the targeted grid enhancing technology deployments, their infrastructure, their assets, but they typically are going to be more cost effective than large scale infrastructure deployments. How does the regulatory model help incentivize scaling those areas? Do you want to start maybe there, Danielle?
Sure. And I think you mean how can it? Because I don't know that it is very effectively. But at the summer NARUC meeting, which just happened last month, there was a discussion about time of use or time varying rates. And I think a lot of commissioners are on board. I mean, they see the potential benefits and the value and the potential for affordability. The regulatory compact involves more than just the commissioners and the utilities, though. It also involves customers and broader set of stakeholder groups. And there's been a tremendous amount of resistance. One of our commission chairs said to a room, "There are 3 people in my state who think time of use rates are the way to go. The 3 commissioners. And that's it." And they are feeling really hamstrung by the lack of support by the broader community to get behind time of use rates or time varying rate structures and the benefits that are achievable with that. So, I mean, how can you use a regulatory structure? Well, you could just decide we're going to do this. I mean, Missouri did. So some of these states where they have said we're going to do time of use rates are not always motivated by major climate goals or clean energy goals. There are very much, I agree with you, Bryce, affordability considerations here. I think there's also maybe more that we could be doing to publicize the impact and the achievability of what could happen with these rate structures. So I just had the tremendous benefit of being able to go to a study tour in Denmark and found out that 70% of customers are using time of use rates. The EnergyNet, the grid operator, publishes 1 p.m. the day before what the hourly rates are going to be for the next day. And pretty much everybody has access to that information through an app. It's also on a website. It's in every newspaper, whatever. They showed just between 2021 and 2022, when this was implemented, a 15% reduction in consumption overall while electrifying. And more specifically, that consumption is moving to off-peak hours. And there's been tremendous flexibility and reduction in peak. So you can have a really tremendous impact. You can improve affordability while meeting all of these other goals, including, of course, reduce greenhouse gases, but also resilience. So I think it's building the broader stakeholder community around the value of this and getting those folks in front of the commissions when it matters. I mean, we need interveners to come to the commissions and say, we see the value, we think it's important. Yes, you should go ahead, and we will figure out programs and education and other mechanisms to leverage the controls that are being built into our devices at this point to make this feasible.
Anything you want to add on this topic, Rich?
Well, that was really good. And so I'll just say, after that all happens, then I think there's a programmatic element to this. We have decades of experience with energy efficiency, moving stuff into people's buildings and processes that they didn't know they wanted or needed and benefited them and saved them money. We're going to need to do that with flexibility too. And so I think we have a massive industry. AESP is an organization where they all go and they talk about ways to make their programs work better. I think we need to mobilize them to get all this stuff deployed.
So I want to dive into planning and stakeholder engagement. we're from the IRP to the DSP. Where are we going with integrated planning? What are we learning from these processes? What sort of key stakeholders are getting engaged? Are they helping us move in a productive direction? I know there's a lot of questions there, but maybe Rich, you can start on kind of what this landscape looks like right now.
Well, thanks. I see a continuum from integrated resource planning, which only focuses on grid side resources remote from ultimate customers, and then started to bring energy efficiency into it as an exception, basically. And now what we have is a proliferation of different kinds of distributed energy resources well beyond energy efficiency. And so we're not just talking about negative load anymore. We're talking about thinking of the distribution system as a significant source of resources, source of power, source of frequency response, source of all of the capabilities that the grid needs. And so thinking of it just as negative load is just not acceptable. It's certainly not accurate. And so this advanced distribution planning, and I think we're still looking for the right name for it. And maybe Danielle thinks we have one, but I don't know. But that's not even enough either, because we're now also trying to work in all of the substitutes for everything. And so that gets in all of the wires. And so we get things like the distribution system implementation planning process in New York, or the DSP process in California, and several states, Michigan, Minnesota, several states are in the early stages of implementing their versions of this. I think we're going to need to get there. But then the further down the road is the reality that with electrification and gas potentially being substituted for electricity in a lot of ways, the silos that face PUCs are increasingly a problem in terms of making choices for the most apt investments from the public. I think of the public as wanting energy service. We have different corridors, which really ought to be merged into one corridor to figure out where the right investments for energy service should go. And different states will do different things, but as long as we're doing them differently, I can assure you we're paying too much money.
I love talking about planning. I 5 years ago launched a NARUC NASIO task force on comprehensive electricity system planning, because we recognized that integrated resource planning was happening pretty well divorced from what distribution system investments were being made, and that there was so much potential for better outcomes with better alignment across these processes. So in 2021, we published 5 roadmaps that presented visions for how planning could be better aligned across IRP and IDSP, is what we call integrated distribution system planning. And those aligned with different regulatory and market structures, vertically integrated, restructured, inside and outside of markets. So those are all still available. Hot tip, we are likely to launch a 1-year refresh starting in the fall of this year. And I'm very excited about that, because there's been a ton of progress on modeling capabilities, on effective approaches to engage community members and stakeholders, on bringing more folks from the energy solution community into these conversations, on how to incorporate state policy into planning at the outset, and how support commissions in providing much more direction to the utilities, so they don't have to go through the bring me a rock, no, not that rock exercise that is indeed a complete waste of time. There's also a ton of interest among the states and our members. Last year, we partnered as NARUC with NASIO and with NASUCA, the consumer advocates, and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And we ran 3 in-person trainings on integrated distribution system planning. And we had about 200 participants over the course of 3 training classes. coming in person to different parts of the country. We're going to do that again this year, starting in December. Also, right now, NARUC and NASIO are co-hosting a virtual cohort with more than 25 states around how to use the frameworks and philosophy of integrated distribution system planning to advance DER utilization in their states and to get more energy efficiency and demand flexibility incorporated into the plans and strategies that the utilities are going to be using. So there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of action. Nobody's got the right answer yet, but there are definitely some leading states and lots more that are fast followers at this stage.
And the one thought, Bryce, I want to just close this with is that it's important to connect planning with investment. To the extent that planning is academic, we can't be just doing that. There has to be some strong connection to investment choices.
There's so many areas we can go before we wrap. There's two I want to do before we close. One is on data. Who gets data? How do they use it? How does it go towards beneficial outcomes? This topic does find its way into the regulatory perspective pretty actively. Usually my question is around analytics and what can we possibly do on the grid, but I'd love for you guys to talk about really how should we be using data for effective outcomes. Danielle, maybe you can start if you have any ideas, or Rich.
Sure. I mean, that's a huge question. We can use all sorts of data to make everything better. Of course. And I was just at a call before this talking about how we can support our members with data access and in making sure that appropriate energy consumption data is available to those who can use it to improve affordability, delivery of services, benchmarking, access to federal funds in order to get more energy efficiency and energy upgrades into multi-tenant buildings, multifamily and low-income buildings. I mean, there's that whole world of how do we use energy consumption data from customers to support their decision-making and their choices and their affordability. And then we invested in a 1.5-year-long effort around grid data. And NARUC worked across cybersecurity parts of DOE, across the Office of Electricity, members, and also national security to come up with a framework for commissions to use with their stakeholders to determine whether grid data should be shared under what circumstances, with what benefits. Grid data is also a really important piece of the data puzzle to ensure that we can get energy efficiency from an aggregator perspective where we need it, where we've got some overloaded feeders, where we can get storage on an overloaded feeder, for example, so that we can have more solar, so that we can, in the reverse, use electric vehicles in the right places and control those. But you can't control the electric vehicles if you don't know what's happening on the feeder, if you don't know what's happening at the system level. So, I mean, data visibility is huge in so many different dimensions, and our members are increasingly recognizing that they need to be part of those discussions, even though it's frankly rather intimidating. Some of our commissions don't have an engineer on staff anymore. The wave of retirements and the evolution of the job markets has meant that they have not been able to compete. So this is hard. We are tapping into the national labs to provide a lot of support to our members in some of this space, and they're happy to do it. But there's always more that can be done.
Anything on the data topic, how we can use it well, who gets the right information to make the right decisions?
Well, people should be able to get the data about their accounts. There's no doubt about that. The reforming the energy vision process in New York and some of the other reforms that other commissions like California have been interested in have been about trying to get information to distributed energy resource innovators so that they can target where the most value is. But we don't really monetize those differences very well. And so this gets into data. There is data, but what do we do with it? And can we turn that data into something valuable, not just something interesting? So like Danielle, there's a lot of things to say about this, and I guess the bottom line for me is utilities are the custodians of a lot of information, and they take their role very seriously. Some might say too seriously. And I think there does need to be a deep conversation about utilities' responsibility as a custodian of all this information.
Second to last question, so we'll be quick on a big topic, and then we'll wrap. There are all kinds of tax incentives, consumer rebates, grid grants, expanded loans, hitting the industry with major opportunities to advance the functionality of the grid. But ultimately, these investments still have to be made locally. How are state regulators and others that are working with them keeping up with these opportunities? What does that look like right now? I know it's very active. Danielle, maybe you can shed a little bit of a light.
Sure. I mean, I think just tactically, a lot of commissions have opened dockets to bring the utilities in and share with the commission and with the stakeholders what federal funding they're applying for, giving stakeholders the opportunity to encourage applications in certain areas. Unfortunately, there are absolutely some utilities who were not inclined to apply for federal funding. You know, there are some for whom the business model and the approach that they have used for the last 50 to 100 years is just fine, thank you very much. And federal funds require a lot of extra work, and there's plenty of additional bureaucracy around it. I think commissions are trying to overcome that inertia. There's been a lot more collaboration between the commissions and the energy offices. So the state energy offices in every state at this point have received a ton of federal money to either run programs or help coordinate across the states, or to promote resilience and put frameworks in place and run planning processes, et cetera. So commissions are, in some cases, relying on the energy offices more than they have in the past. Some energy offices are being creative and trying to provide more support to the commissions. Unfortunately, there was, I think, a big missed opportunity in the development of the bill and IRA that there was not any funding set aside for commissions. And so they are short-staffed. I mean, some things are going to move more slowly because they just don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the humans available to review different, some of the filings that might be coming as a result. And ultimately, the commissions are going to have to sign off on any utility-related projects that require ratepayer cost share. So it's unfortunate that that's the case, and they're certainly trying to be creative and leaning on their colleagues across the states to understand what's out there and what would be beneficial. Those connections are not seamless, and there are a lot of programs that are coming through different places that aren't particularly well connected to the commission in the utility world. I know Solar for All is trying in many cases, but I don't know that they're there yet. And there are others. But Rich, what are you seeing? Maybe some more bright spots.
Well, I think I see it the same way. I think that energy offices and PUC's relationship will be tested in this, and those states that have good relationships will do better than the states where they're distant from each other. And it doesn't mean that the energy office won't follow the rules and make sure that everything is done properly, but opportunities could very easily be missed. And the connection to the power sector and to benefit captive ratepayers of monopolies may not see the same benefits as they might have if there had been the kind of cooperation that I think some states will do and will benefit from.
Fortunate from our standpoint, DOE is getting lots of interest, right? So very competitive solicitations. All right, last one. Whoever starts gets the second to last word, and whoever goes last gets the last word. I guess the quick question is the regulatory leg widening or shrinking? The regulatory landscape, is it keeping pace with the very dynamic market conditions right now? And, maybe you can provide some sort of a perspective on what that looks like at this point, and where maybe where you see it going potentially if it's changing in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak up, sure, on behalf of my members and say, largely the regulatory system the pace of the regulatory system is a design feature, not necessarily a bug. You want really sizable investments to be well considered, right? Especially since ratepayers are going to end up paying for whatever the utility does. And we really want to make sure that we're protecting ratepayers and not signing off on significant investments that won't have some kind of a beneficial return for those same customers. At the same time, of course, that doesn't move quickly by nature, and for the same, staff constraint reasons. And there's also commissioner turnover. The average tenure of a commissioner is about 4 years. There are certainly some states where that's not the case, but it's a lot to get up to speed on, and you have really consequential decisions to make in this environment. There are some states that have set up accelerated pilot programs, like Vermont, that have regulatory sandboxes. I'm using air quotes for folks who are just listening. In New York and Connecticut, where we can try new things more rapidly and see how they're working. Fundamentally, pilots need to be set up to answer real questions, and ideally be set up with a theory of change for how they can ultimately scale. And so what we're testing in a pilot is, can this scale? What will happen if it scales? That's not universally the case, but I think that's one of the solutions. Getting better about pilots and getting pilots scalable faster is one thing that is very manageable in this regulatory structure and this environment that we have set up. The other thing I'll say is utilities can do a lot without commission approval, but they often don't. I think there is, not I think, I know there is a historically risk-averse nature to all of these entities. There are utilities that will sometimes just do something and not make sure that they have locked in the possibility of having it be ratepayer funded, and will ask for that permission later. And that is a way of moving faster too. It's not all on the commissions.
Rich, last word to you.
Thanks. Well, it is great to see when utilities feel like they have a confidence in the government infrastructure that they can feel like they can do the right thing and that they'll be fairly treated in the end. That's I think, an example of the objective that regulatory reform should be going for, is that there isn't so much mystery about it and so much risk aversion. So I think I agree with Danielle that regulatory lag and the rigor that is involved with that is a feature, but the circumstances have been shifting under our feet, and the intensity for innovation to presenting opportunities which seem to be delayed in paying off for the public interest is painful to watch. And so it does prompt the question, is there something better we can do? And of course, the existing system does have many structures using riders to flow through with no regulatory or little regulatory advance review, potential for retroactive review, but rarely happens. Gas system safety, for example, has significant accounts for, and we certainly want the gas system to be safe, but it has significant accounts that allows gas utilities to make massive amounts of investments to make sure that that outcome is achieved. I think an interesting question then is what corollary can we create for innovation that allows for progress, that creates a corridor for progress where pre-approvals become as unnecessary as with gas safety. I think that's an interesting question. We're going to need to have some attention to this, because the pressures that the private sector is putting on government, demanding, for whether it's from data centers or from wherever, is going to become very strong. And as a former government official, I can say that government will react when businesses like this express utter frustration. Not that it's not that they were frustrated with the answer; they're frustrated with the process. And I think that's something that government can spend some time thinking about. I'll close by saying that multi-year rate plans, the opportunity for a PUC to provide for a utility a runway of 3, 4, 5 years of revenue requirement and other guidance is, I think, built for addressing this question. It gives the opportunity for the utility to have some clarity about what it can do over time. And the intensity of this question, the issues relating to it, only seem to motivate states, I think, to consider anew multi-year rate plans.
Well, Rich, Danielle, thank you for such a substantive conversation. Sometimes we feel like we hold back a little bit on the hard questions that are the regulatory ones. So thanks for going further than scratching the surface with us today on trying to unpack these dynamics.
It was a pleasure to talk to both of you. Great to see you guys.
Great to be here. Thanks, Bryce,
Take
for
care.
the invite.
Bye-bye. Thanks again to our season sponsor, Virtual Peaker. If you enjoy Grid Forward Chats, please follow us on your favorite podcast platform, give us a like or a review, and tell your colleagues. You can listen to all episodes and learn more about our efforts to advance the grid at gridforward.org.